Hacking and slashing are two really common activities in video games, but there's a genre where you get to do both at the same time. It's called a hack and slash, and that's what we're looking at today. The game Power Champions has been in my review queue for a long time, basically since I started this channel, and I think it's a really good game for us to learn from because it's got strengths, it's got weaknesses, and it's also got some issues with the overall kind of creative direction. It's inconsistent, let's put it that way. A lot of the issues that we're going to see in this video arise from one place that is really common for indie developers and particularly common for solo developers, where the developer has focused so strongly on making a complete game and perhaps not tested it as frequently or received feedback as frequently as they should early on in that process before they make tons and tons of stuff. So let's get right into the gameplay and we'll see what you think, leave comments and all that kind of stuff. Now, one of the things that really kind of sticks out about the gameplay as you're playing this, the kind of feel of it, is that the attacks sort of feel like they lock you in place. You totally lose momentum when you're attacking. So I'm moving around the character with WASD and I'm clicking to attack, and then I'm using the other keys to use those special moves where you can see the tooltips for it down in the bottom right. And whether I use a normal attack or whether I use one of these special moves, my character completely stops dead and performs a move, and they're in like a kind of control lock for that moment. And there's not really a great sense of fluidity. Oh, there's our kind of Dragon Ball Z big special that we do with the R, and then we wait for it to charge up loads. The other thing about the combat that really sticks out is that, you can see here that the two enemy types are kind of creating different formations, and some are standing back and shooting, and some are getting in close. But they're so close to each other that it doesn't really make much difference. And a lot of the combat in this game just sort of ends up with all of the enemies piling onto you in one space, and they don't seem to have much collision with each other. They don't seem to avoid each other much. And that usually just ends up with a big mess of characters in the middle of the screen, and you're just kind of clicking and you can't see what's going on. Now, I know, from playing things like Dynasty Warriors and similar games, that the kind of sense of overwhelm of there just being too much stuff attacking you, and Vampire Survivors is another example of this. That's part of the game and it's part of the genre. But when they have no collision and they just become a big mess, when you get into this kind of clicking frenzy, it sort of stops feeling satisfying because you don't really feel like you have any direct control over what's going on.
Now, you will face Rhinoceros. Get ready.
You've got a lot of this kind of bosses taunting you throughout the genre thing. It does add to that kind of Saturday morning kids TV Power Rangers type vibe.
After 10,000 years, I'm free!
I don't hate it. Another thing about the game feel here, and it's very similar to what happened in the very first game I reviewed, Calibrium. So I think, okay, I'm going to get there eventually. And then I start messing around. And then when I do hit the goal, everything suddenly changes. When I finish the level, in this case by killing a boss, I often don't see it coming. It just seems to happen out of nowhere. And I guess it's because the boss is in there with its health bar mixed in with all the other health bars, and I'm just clicking wildly. When I'm fighting a boss in something like Dark Souls, and when the health bar is really low, I know exactly how far away I am from victory. There are so many times when I played a level in this game, and I just won, and it felt like it had happened randomly rather than because of stuff I was doing. Let's see that happen now. I'm spamming. I get in there and yeah, he kind of just goes down and the other guys in the level don't matter. We've got that very janky pixel text again in the pop-up. Probably also notice here that the sound effects that go with the attacks don't feel like they connect. There are sound effects for attacking, there are sound effects for hitting the enemies, but they don't really give the feedback that you'd expect, and they don't feel particularly crunchy. I feel like the sound design hasn't really focused on trying to make the sound contribute to what we call juice. Juice is kind of like the little things to do with things like screen shake and flashes and all of those small bits of micro animation and sound effects that make things feel satisfying or make it feel like you're getting hurt when you get hurt. That's the kind of inverse of this. All the times when my character does get hit in later levels, I sort of don't really know that it's happening unless I'm looking at the health bar the entire time. In terms of the good stuff, I think you can see a lot of indicators of it on the screen now. We've got a big library of stuff in this game, and we're going to see more levels and more enemies, and you've got characters that have these big move sets of different things they can do. There's loads of content here. I just wish some of these more core things to do with the overall creative direction and the game feel, the feel of the combat, I wish these things had been refined before the developer had gone and added all this extra stuff to the game. And it's why it's so important to get a demo of your game in front of people as early as possible. I don't mean something that's close to finished. I mean something that is raw and ugly, and that you are doing to check that the game that you're making is something that people like, because there are some fundamental things here with the feel of the combat and the information given to the player and the kind of the way that the attacking and the destruction of enemies feels or doesn't feel good, that really should have been caught way earlier in the development of this game before it got to this stage. Now, some of these things can still be improved, right? When you see that level up animation, there are things that you can just add to make that more satisfying, and the same with some of these sound effects issues. There are lots of things here that if the developer is treating this as a work in progress, they can go in and add things. Things that are harder to change this late in development are more fundamental things, like how the attacking works, for example. I think my next question is more one for the audience watching at home. These statistics up the top, which of these do you think are actually relevant to have during gameplay? Total damage done? I'm not sure, because I would think a level has a set amount of enemies in it and you can't really do more damage than the amount of health that the enemies have in the level. I'm not sure. Enemies killed, maybe. Difficulty, maybe. But the time elapsed, time left, it's weird to have both of those, and I think some of these things at the top, like, I'm not going to read that during gameplay, right? And some of these things, maybe it would be better if it was a bar. The bonus stage thing, it's like, I kind of worked out what that meant during gameplay, but it's not immediately clear. So I think it's worth thinking about what this information at the top of the screen actually adds. I'm not sure why I need to know the time elapsed if the important thing is how much time is left, for example. When I first booted this game up, I was struck with a feeling I get with a lot of these kind of indie games, which is someone has made a really big game, perhaps not polished individual parts of it as much as they could have. You can already see from this screen we've got loads of characters to choose from, and ideally on this channel I really hope people send me games that are earlier on in the development life cycle, that are something like a vertical slice. Now, if you haven't heard that term before, a vertical slice, it isn't just a demo, it's like a chunk of the game that is meant to say, here is the intended final quality of the game. When a game is this far along and it has so much content already in it, then my design reviews can't be as helpful, because a lot of the feedback that I give is harder to action if a game is closer to completion. It's a lot easier to make your game a lot better by getting a lot of feedback on it early on. Some of the things I'm going to say in this review would have been more helpful for the developer to hear when they were making the first level of this game.
In the depths of the cosmos, where only stars twinkled, a powerful vortex emerged, uniting cosmic energies.
We're getting a lore dump. Now, these AI voices, they stick out immediately as something I don't like. We're going to hear a few of these AI voices throughout this review, and they do match the characters quite well. Sound a bit cheesy, they mispronounce certain words in a way that really stands out. I do think the developer has thought about the way the voices match the characters or not.
Became the cradle of the first races. Fawns, beings with a blend of human and animal traits. They all lived in perfect harmony and bliss. However, my purpose extended beyond Zarian's borders. Sacrificing a part of my own essence, I employed my divine power to bring forth other planets, birthing life in countless forms, from the mesmerizing fauna to the captivating flora. Years have passed, and I sensed an incredibly powerful, malevolent vibration. I used the little power I had at my disposal to try to return and contact her.
Okay, so we've got some kind of celestial god mummy who is having to summon the power champions because she's gone waltzing around the universe and left her planet unattended. Power champions, the most powerful elemental warriors that the universe has ever seen. So far, the vibe of this, very Saturday morning cartoon. It's giving Power Rangers. It's giving Captain Planet.
By your powers combined.
Those might be really outdated references yet, but it's, for me, it gives this kind of 80s, 90s kind of He-Man Masters of the Universe kind of vibe. In some ways, I think it's a shame that they didn't lean into this a bit more, because it feels cheesy, but at the moment, all of this kind of pseudo-realistic character art makes it feel like it's not trying to be cheesy. And I think if this had been something like Awesome Noughts, where it was deliberately tongue-in-cheek, then I think this would have hit a lot better. At the moment, it kind of feels a bit juvenile and childish, and it's unclear whether that's on purpose as a like ironic thing or whether it's just unintentionally goofy. And I think if I'm being less kind, then I think unintentionally goofy is probably where we've ended up with this.
Power champions! The most powerful elemental warriors that the universe has ever seen.
Power champions, fighting the evil with all their power. Power champions, doing things that champions do. Power champions,
Who were created long ago to protect and ensure the safety of Zarian and all the planets.
Just too much lore. You can't expect someone to care about this much about lore before we've played the game. So we've got a little map screen where you can run around and choose your mission. And it's a bit strange because this is point and click, and then when we get into the action game, which is more like sort of Diablo meets Dynasty Warriors, it becomes WASD and then clicking to attack. It's a bit of a strange shift. We're going to go through this portal and be put into an arena to fight a bunch of dudes or robo dudes or whatever the preferred term is.
Ancient stone is a sanctuary of untouched beauty.
I don't care. I'm really sorry, but I don't care at this stage of the game. And if something is a beautiful place, you need to show me it's a beautiful place, and showing me your reasonably okay 3D art, but with like a Photoshop filter over it that makes it look less beautiful. This is not a good way of telling me that this area is a sanctuary of untouched beauty. I don't care. I'm going to skip this. We've got cinematics going into the levels, and I think this is indicative of like the whole of this project. It's that this person has tried to do everything that they expect a video game to have. It's got story, it's got dialogue, it's got cinematics. And I just wish that I'd got to review some elements of this game earlier on in the life cycle so that we could have got those bits better before they started adding all this stuff. Cinematics, dialogue, it's stuff that is not worth implementing until you know your gameplay is really something to write home about. We're going to get our first character introduced by mainly shouting, I think.
I am Artorias Firestorm, and I will destroy all of you in the name of the goddess.
In the name of the goddess.
Anomaly detected. Order to destroy. All automatons get ready.
I'm not going to dwell too long on the AI voices. I think you at home probably already have your own opinion on this. But this works, right? When there's a robot talking, it works. So if you are thinking about what type of game to make, and you're thinking, oh, I'm going to use the AI voices because I want voiceover in my game, make the characters be characters that would speak like that. Because The characters who are meant to be human don't come across well. This little robot enemy, whatever that is fine, but by and large, I feel like a lot of work was put into getting these AI voices into the game. I don't know how much they add, compared to just having to read the text. One of the things that jumps out at me quite a bit is this mismatch between reasonably high quality 3D art of the environment and the characters and the animations, and then the interface and the text. We have really inconsistent sort of styles, quality levels. You've got this one sort of comic book text style used for the damage number pop-ups. You've got like pixel art text in places, and it's just all different levels of quality and different styles. I think some of the music picks in this are quite good, but it's pure fantasy soundtrack, and I don't think that's really what the rest of the game is doing. You've got some fantasy heroes and you've got sci-fi enemies, and that's fine. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. Loads of games do that now. They do this kind of science fantasy mashup, like Overwatch does it, League does it. That's the sort of thing where if you do that, then it needs to roll through to every part of the game's creative directions. This kind of science fantasy approach to the characters and the character art doesn't really follow through to other parts of the game. It's a bit of a mishmash of different things. I appreciate that a lot of the animations and assets we're seeing in this game might be from libraries, and I know that there's going to be some people in the comments who take umbrage with that and make a big deal out of it and go, oh, these are all just dudes from the so-and-so Power Champions bargain bucket, whatever. I really don't care about that, and I really don't mind. What I do mind about is the kind of creative inconsistency of some of this, of putting these characters into a game and then not making a UI that looks like it's from the same game as them. Hi, if you're new to the channel, I'm just popping up for a quick message in the middle here to ask you to do the usual things. Please subscribe to the channel. I do have a Patreon if you want to support this and help me to be able to do it full time, or at least spend more of my time doing it. I'm a game designer by trade. I've been doing it professionally for 10 years, and by professionally I just mean getting paid and doing it as a job. I've been doing it as a hobby for much longer than that. I started this channel because I thought it was a unique idea to try and review people's games as they were making them rather than when they were finished. If you're a developer and you're working on a game and you think it would be helpful to have me review it this way, then you can send it to me. All of the information is in the video description. You can email me at indiegameclinic@gmail.com and you can send me a game to review. Now, the game we're looking at today is a bit too far along. It's quite hard for me to give feedback that the developer is going to be able to use. So if you've got a game that's earlier in the development process, you're usually going to get more value out of that kind of feedback from me. And yeah, I mean, this is what I do for a living. I've been a professional game designer for 10 years. And if you were a big company and you hired me to consult, then that might cost you £400 or £500 a day, whatever that is in your currency. I do this for free because, well, it's not really free, is it? I get content for my channel, but you do get design consultancy at a level that you might not get if you were just showing it to random people. So I do think the people who have had their games on the Indie Game Clinic so far have got a lot of value out of that. Some of them have continued to work on their games and have started making changes, some of which I suggested and some of which are just from themselves or from other people's suggestions, and that's great to see. And some people have changed direction and started making something else, which is sometimes the best thing to do.
Champion is arrived. Rhinoceros waiting for champion.
What's going on, spirit of nature? What is this all about?
Goddess promised Rhinoceros that she stay with Rhinoceros forever. Goddess lied to Rhinoceros. Goddess is a liar.
So the Rhinoceros is a simp, and now he's turned into an incel because the goddess has not come off from her intergalactic gallivanting.
She gave her life to create the universe Rhinoceros.
No, she promised stay with Rhinoceros forever.
Whatever you think about the kind of style or the delivery of this, each of these dialogues is trying to give some context for why we're fighting, which is ultimately what dialogues do in fighting games. There is some characterization coming through here of, why is this spirit of nature fighting us? It's supposed to be a benevolent, gentle beast. Doesn't look like a gentle beast. He's got two whacking great hammers, but that's beside the point. Even if you don't like the AI voices, I feel like there have been some good choices here about which voices to apply to which characters, and the voices do sound like they fit the characters, even if we get an occasional like mispronounced word or kind of weird stops in sentences and stuff like that. That said, I could have done this voiceover. Liar, you're a liar. Rhinoceros will crush you. I think that would have worked. Again, this text is the one that really bugs me out of everything. It's not what you would expect in a game that uses these 3D art assets. I would expect to see something high res, something kind of chunkier, something that maybe looks like a kind of beveled thing that looks like I don't know. There's just too many things here, and like whoever's watching this, if you don't feel like graphic design is a strong suit of yours, one of the simplest typography rules you can apply for yourself in your games is to have a budget of fonts and to not let yourself use more than 2 fonts. That's what I would say. So here, this pixel art font for the power-up text and the text underneath it, which is almost completely illegible in this shot. We've got the subtitle text, which is a sans serif font, and then we have this like techie halo-ish font for the hard. Just pick 2 and use them for everything, and have some logic around which type of thing gets which type of text. I think a really good reference for this can be things like cards in card games. So if you look at a Magic the Gathering card, there are places on the card where they have a slightly more fancy text, and then there are places on the card where they have an easier to read text, and that's it. They don't use 4 different types of font on the same thing. The typography here is really like a microcosm of the issues with this game. It's that it is creatively inconsistent and it's all over the place. I do really like that sort of special move animation where you fly up in the air. Kind of reminds me of Dragon Ball Z games. Now, I don't know if you notice on this level, there is a big ball of water and there's a big ball of fire. And I played this level a few times and I couldn't work out how to actually interact with these.
And use the power of the water to destroy his flame.
There she is. Sorry, Goddess, I didn't mean to talk over you. But she keeps saying that, and there's nothing to indicate how to do it. And I couldn't work out how to do it, so I just carried on hacking and slashing, as was my wont. And we get into this dialogue loop on this second level where Rhinoceros keeps going, yeah, I've got fire in it, and then...
Champion used the power of the water to destroy his flame.
And she says that, and then I try and do it, and then I can't get it to work.
Rhinoceros call Reacher. Burn everything around.
And this is cool, right?
Champion used the power of the water to destroy his flame.
This is conceptually cool, right? That we've got this multi-stage boss and there's a point at which everything goes on fire. I like it. I like it when everything goes on fire. That's peak video games. But telling me I should be doing something with that ball of water and I just couldn't for the life of me find out what it was, and I played this fight multiple times. So again, this is the sort of thing where playtesting things with people way early on before you release is really important.
The power of the water to destroy his flame.
Mate. That kill is another example of I beat the boss and I didn't know I was just about to beat the boss. It feels really, really unsatisfying to finish a combat with a boss in a game and to not feel like you knew when the last blow was coming.
Well, now with you more calm, let's have a chat. What's going on here? Why those machines invade here?
I like that he's given him a chance, you know. This dude, he raged out, he set everything on fire, and our hero is now saying, look, we can still talk about this. It's good. It's good. I like it. I like the fact that the hero is actually being shown to be kind and have some traits that a hero should have. Again, we're back in Saturday morning kids cartoon territory with this.
He help Rhinoceros. He make Rhinoceros do this. He tell Rhinoceros that goddess lie to Rhinoceros.
Who did this? Who hurt you and lied to you, Rhinoceros?
May I join the party?
Sorry, I skipped ahead there. Bad guy shows up. Big bad guy, presumably, kills our noble rhino who was temporarily a villain. We go to the next area and we meet our sister. This is basically a point where I get to unlock her.
I've destroyed some of these things, but they won't stop coming.
Now, this is going to be a reference that no one gets, but this lady has a Scottish accent for some reason, and that means that she sounds a bit like British TV personality Lorraine Kelly. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I find it quite amusing that they are brother and sister and that she has a Scots accent and he is American. But maybe that's just how things work on this world. You get your accent depending on which of the elements you represent.
I can imagine. I've also destroyed several of these things in ancient stone, and unfortunately, the spirit of nature is dead. Some entity emerged through the portal and killed it right in front of me.
We know this happened. If you ever have one character explaining to another character what happened earlier, and the player or the audience already knows about it, make that as brief as possible. Don't make it 2 or 3 sentences long. Whatever you think about this writing and these voices, there is a good attempt at characterization here. The characters have individual voices. I don't mean the actual audible voices. I mean their word choice, right? So she calls him little brother all the time affectionately. That's quite sweet. I like it. So I can be Thalia, who is called the tank. Now, I worry a little bit about the concept of a tank in a game like this, because tanks tend to only really make sense in the context of parties, and this isn't a party-based game. So if you're basically saying, oh, this is the character where you damage people really slowly but you don't die as fast, that's not a very exciting thing to unlock. I play tanks quite a lot. I tend to main tanks when I play like MOBAs or things like Overwatch. The idea of playing a tank in a single player game does not excite me. You're not doing it for someone else, which is what tanking is all about. It's about taking hits that were meant for someone else. If you're the only target on the battlefield, then being a kind of high health, low damage character is not exciting. I think that kind of tank character can work as the first character, because it's basically a tutorial character where you can't do as much cool stuff, but you don't die as easily. The problem with the unlock sequence that I experienced in playing with these first 2 characters is the first character that you unlock is a bit underwhelming, doesn't have a cool damage dealing special move, and that makes it feel like the unlocking of them was like, well, now you've got a less fun character you can play with, whoop-de-doo. If I think of the most recent games I've really poured lots of hours into where you unlock another character, you know, something like Slay the Spire, when you unlock the characters, they feel vastly different. This second character is like, I can see the utility of these moves, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're fun. I think that kind of character that has less cool moves but can take more damage works really well as a first character, and they might work as a late game unlock because at that point you are more invested in the game and you want to do better at it. Having the first character you unlock after the starting character be this boring is not good, I don't think. Just look at some footage from the second set of levels where you fight another giant woman, but she's a grey giant woman, so we know she's a baddie. Again, cool environment. I don't know how much of this stuff is library assets. Again, I don't care. I just care about creative consistency. And when I see that text pop up over that world,
or I will destroy all of you!
The anomaly passed through ancient stone and is here. Destroy it.
Give up immediately while you can. Your fate will be tragic if you continue.
I'm not entirely sure what this mini-map adds as well, because it's not really a helpful navigational tool. It's like, what is it for? What is this mini-map achieving for me? I looked at it during gameplay and I thought, oh yeah, that's good, there's a mini-map, but I never really found myself in a position where I needed to use it for anything. So it feels like a sort of example of a put in just for the sake of it type feature. I don't have the development history of this game. I don't know all the steps that the developer has gone through to get here. But I think that the amount of work they've put into this is commendable. But a lot of the issues that I've identified almost certainly come from not testing this with enough people early on. What this game highlights, and what a lot of the games I see highlight really, is the need to do that. Make a really early demo that doesn't have all this extra stuff in, just to test out the core parts of the game that are the kind of bread and butter of the genre. I'm almost certain that if the developer had made this game as a demo with just one level and one character and no dialogue, tested that base level, that base single level prototype with 10 or 20 people, then a lot of the things that I've complained about here, like it feeling a bit repetitive, or the sound effects not connecting very well, or the attack animations feeling like you lose momentum and that you're kind of just stuck in a lock, a lot of these things would have been solved a lot earlier. But I think this determination to get the game to a point where it has all of the content, all of the systems in, it's commendable, but ultimately it takes you to a game that is less fun to play. If I were to think of the last game in this genre that really grabbed me for a long period of time, it was Diablo 3. And Diablo 3 works well because all of the attacks and all of the moves feel good, you can see what's going on, and it has that roll mechanic which it means that you're constantly making split-second decisions between, do I stay in the fray or do I get out of the fray? And if I get out of the fray, what direction am I getting out of the fray in? The problem here is it's just hordes of enemies that are all doing the same thing. My moment-to-moment decisions are quite limited, and a lot of the time I can't really tell what I'm doing. I really would have liked the developer to fix those things before they developed a whole story, before they developed multiple areas. Now I can see that there are probably way more levels in this game and there are 3 other characters to unlock and stuff like that. I'm not going to test all of that because at this stage I'm not interested in all of that, because the core gameplay doesn't appeal to me enough. If the main thing that I'm doing moment to moment doesn't feel good, then all of the stuff that you do to extend the game's content is of lower value. Because if the basic action of running around a battlefield, getting in and out of combat and taking down enemies doesn't feel good, there are some issues here with the gameplay, and they can be fixed. But I think this is an example of a project which has not been approached in that methodical way that I would like to see, which is before you develop all this extra content, before you develop loads of levels for your game, before you add a story, you just make sure that the gameplay feels good and that it is as good as the best thing in its category. Even if you're a solo developer working on your own, your first prototype for a game like this should be aiming to feel as good as Diablo, or feel as good as Dynasty Warriors, or feel as good as Hades, or whatever game in the genre you think is the best. That's something to focus on. Don't focus on making what you consider to be a full video game with all of this stuff in. It's not about the amount of stuff you add in, because that stuff only has value when people feel the gameplay is enjoyable enough for them to want to play multiple levels of it. If you want to check out this game, I will put a link below for you to do that. In the meantime, stay safe and watch out for giant rhinos and big grey women.
Damn it! He is very powerful.